Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Old Fart here, just farting around. I got Winky with me here today. We got a high five, Wink, for the folks at home. A kiss? How about a high five? Oh yeah, good boy. Another kiss? All right. Again, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. And today's list is going to be especially geared for us old farts. If you're a young fart, it's still okay. This is definitely going to appeal to you as well. I'm sure you're going to find some enjoyment and get some education out of it. And this is going to be my top 10 list of old fart achievers. That's right. Us old farts could still do things and achieve things in our older age, and this is going to be a list of those that is exactly that. A list of old fart achievers. And here we go with number one. Number one, Grandma Moses. Anna Marie Robertson Moses was born September 7th, 1860. She was known as Grandma Moses, and she was an American folk artist.
She began painting in earnest at the age of 78 years old. She gained popularity during the 1950s, being featured on the cover of Time magazine in 1953.
She was the subject of numerous television programs and a 1950 Oscar-nominated biographical documentary. Her autobiography titled My Life's History was published in 1952. She was also awarded 2 honorary doctoral degrees. Moses was a live-in housekeeper for a total of 15 years, starting at age 12. An employer noticed her appreciation for their prints made by Coomer and Ives, and they supplied her with drawing materials. Moses and her husband began their married life in Virginia, where they worked on farms.
In 1905, they returned to the northeastern United States and settled in Eagle Bridge, New York. They had 10 children, 5 of whom survived infancy. She embroidered pictures with yarn until disabled by arthritis.
In her 1961 obituary, the New York Times said, "The simple realism, nostalgic atmosphere, and luminous color with which Grandma Moses portrayed simple farm life and rural countryside won her a wide following. She was able to capture the excitement of winter's first snow, Thanksgiving preparations, and the new young green of oncoming spring. In person, Grandma Moses charmed wherever she went. A tiny, lively woman with mischievous gray eyes and a quick wit, she could be sharp-tongued with a sycophant and stern with an errant grandchild. Moses' work has been a subject of numerous museum exhibitions worldwide and has been extensively merchandised, such as on greeting cards. In 2006, her 1943 painting, titled Sugaring Off, was sold at Christie's, New York for $1.36 million, setting an auction record for the artist. At age 27, she worked on the same farm with Thomas Salmon Moses, a hired man. They were married and established themselves near Staunton, Virginia, where they spent nearly 2 decades, living and working in turn on 5 local farms. 4 of them are the Bell Farm or Eld Farm, the Dudley Farm, Mount Airy Farm, and Mount Nebo. To supplement the family income at Mount Nebo, Anna made potato chips and churned butter from the milk of a cow that she purchased with her savings. Later, the couple bought a farm in Mount Airy near Verona, and it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2012. Having bought the house in 1901, it was the first residence the family owned, and they lived there until September 1902. She was a member of the Society of Mayflower Descendants and Daughters of the American Revolution, and her 100th birthday was proclaimed Grandma Moses Day by New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller. Life magazine celebrated her birthday by featuring her on its September 19, 1960 cover. The children's book, Grandma Moses Storybook, was published in 1961. Sadly, Grandma Moses went back to our Creator at age 101 on December 13, 1961, at the Health Center in Hoosick Falls, New York. She's buried there at the Maple Grove Cemetery. President John F. Kennedy memorialized her. The death of Grandma Roses removed a beloved figure from American life. The directness and vividness of her paintings restored a primitive freshness to our perception of the American scene. Both her work and her life helped our nation renew its pioneer heritage and recall its roots in the countryside on the frontier. All Americans mourn her loss. After her death, her work was exhibited in several large traveling exhibitions in the United States and abroad. And that brings us to number 2 on our list. Number 2, Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Arthur William Russell III was born May 18, 1872, and he was an English philosopher, logician, mathematician, and public intellectual. He influenced mathematics, logic, set theory, and various areas of analytic philosophy. He was one of the early 20th century's prominent logicians and founder of analytical philosophy, along with his predecessor, Gottlob Frege, his friend and colleague. G.E. Moore and his student and protege, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Russell and Moore led the British revolt against idealism. Together with his former teacher, Alfred North Whitehead, Russell wrote Principia Mathematica, a milestone in the development of classical logic and a major attempt to reduce the whole of mathematics to logic. Russell's article on denoting has been considered a paradigm of philosophy. Russell was educated at the Trinity College at the University of Cambridge, where he graduated in 1893. He was a pacifist who championed anti-imperialism and chaired the England-based India League. He went to prison for his pacifism during the First World War, and he initially supported appeasing Hitler's Nazi Germany before changing his view in 1943, describing war as a necessary lesser of two evils. In the wake of the Second World War, he welcomed American global hegemony in preference to either Soviet hegemony or no world leadership, even if it were to come to the cost of using their nuclear weapons. He would later criticize Stalinist totalitarianism, condemn the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War, and become an outspoken proponent of nuclear disarmament. In 1950, Russell was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in recognition of his varied and significant writings in which he championed humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. He was also the recipient of the De Morgan Medal in 1932, the Sylvester Medal in 1934, the Kalinga Prize in 1957, and the Jerusalem Prize in 1963. On November 23, 1969, he wrote to the Times newspaper saying that preparation for show trials in Czechoslovakia was highly alarming. That same month, he appealed to the Secretary General U Thant of the United Nations to support an International War Crimes Commission to investigate alleged torture and genocide by the United States in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. The following month, he protested to Alexei Kosygin over the expulsion of Alexander Solzhenitsyn from the Soviet Union of Writers. Unfortunately, Russell passed of influenza just after 8 p.m. on February 2, 1970 at his home in Parendahuth at age 97. His body was cremated in Coleman Bay on February 5, 1970 with 5 people present, and in accordance with his will, there was no religious ceremony, but 1 minute's silence. His ashes were laid scattered over the Welsh mountains, and although he was born in Monmouthshire and died in Perthyn in Wales, Russell identified as English. Later in 1970, on October 23rd, his will was published showing he had left an estate valued at £69,423, which is equivalent to 1.4 million pounds in 2023. In 1980, a memorial to Russell was commissioned by a committee including the philosopher A.J. Ayer. It consists of a bust of Russell in Red Lion Square in London, sculpted by Marshall Quinton. And that brings us to number 3 on our list. Number 3 is number 3 is Eamon de Valera. Eamon de Valera, first registered as George de Valero, changed sometime before 1901 to Edward de Valera. He was born October 14, 1882, and he was an American-born Irish statesman and political leader. He served as President of Ireland from 1959 to 1973 and 3 terms as Prime Minister from 1932 to 1937, and as Taoiseach from 1937 to 1948, and then from 1951 to 1954, and from 1957 to 1959. He had a leading role in introducing the Constitution of Ireland in 1937 and was a dominant figure in political circles from the early 1930s to the late 1960s, when he served terms as both the head of government and head of state. De Valera was a commander of the Irish Volunteers at Boland's Mill during the 1960 Easter Rising, and he was arrested and sentenced to death, but released for a variety of reasons, including his American citizenship and their public response to the British execution of rising leaders. He returned to Ireland after being jailed in England and became one of the leading political figures of the War of Independence. De Valera's political beliefs evolved from militant Irish republicanism to strong social, cultural, and fiscal conservatism. He has been characterized as having a stern and unbending and also devious demeanor. His roles in the Civil War have also been interpreted as making him a divisive figure in Irish history. Biographer Tim Pat Coogan sees his time in power as being characterized by economic and cultural stagnation, while Diarmaid Federer argues that the stereotypes of De Valera was as austere and cold. He played rugby at Black Rock and Rockwell College, then for Munster around 1905. He remained a lifelong devotee of rugby, attending international matches even towards the end of his life when he was nearly blind. Eamon de Valera unfortunately went back to our Creator because he passed from pneumonia and heart failure in Linden Convalescent Home, which is in Black Rock, Dublin, on August 29, 1975 at age 92. His wife, Sinead de Valera, 4 years his senior, had died the previous January on the eve of their 65th wedding anniversary. His body lay in state at the Dublin Castle and was given a full state funeral on September 3rd at St. Mary's Pro Cathedral, which had been broadcast on national television. Over 200,000 people reportedly lined the 3-mile funeral route from Dublin city centre to Glasnevin Cemetery. He is buried in Glasnevin alongside his wife and son Brian. And that'll bring us to number 4 on our list. Number 4, Pablo Picasso. Pablo Ruiz Picasso, born October 25th, 1891. Cut.
Pablo Ruiz Picasso, born October 25th, 1881. He was a Spanish painter, sculptor, printmaker, ceramicist, and theater designer. Spent most of his adult life in France. One of the most influential artists of the 20th century. He is known for co-founding the Cubist movement, the invention of the constructed sculpture, the co-invention of collage, and for his wide variety of styles that he helped develop and explore. Among his most famous works are the Proto-Cubist Les Demoiselles d'Avion in 1907 and the anti-war painting Guernica in 1937, a dramatic portrayal of the bombing of Guernica by German and Italian air forces during the Spanish Civil War. Beginning his formal training under his father, José Ruiz y Blasville. Age 7, Picasso demonstrated extraordinary artistic talent. From a young age, painting in a naturalistic manner through his childhood and adolescence. During his first decade of the 20th century, his style changed as he experimented with different theories, techniques, and ideas. After 1906, the Fauvist work of the older artist Henri Matisse motivated Picasso to explore more radical styles, beginning a fruitful rivalry between the two artists who subsequently were often paired by critics as leaders of modern art. Picasso's output, especially in his early career, is often periodized. While the names of many of his later periods are debated, the most commonly accepted periods in his work are the Blue Period, the Rose Period, the African Influence Period, the Analytical Cubism, and Synthetic Cubism, also referred to as the Crystal Period. Much of Picasso's work of the late 1910s and early 1920s is a neoclassical style, and his work in the mid-1920s often has characteristics of surrealism. His later work often combines his elements of his earlier styles. Exceptionally prolific throughout the course of his long life, Picasso achieved universal renown and immense fortune for his revolutionary artistic accomplishments and became one of the best figures well known in the 20th century art scene.
Again, Picasso was extraordinarily prolific throughout his long lifetime. At the time of his death, there was more than 45,000 unsold works in his estate, comprising 818 paintings, 1,228 sculptures, 3,222 ceramics, over 7,000 drawings, 150 sketchbooks, many thousands of prints and numerous tapestries and rugs. The most complete but not exhaustive catalog of his works, the Catalogue Raison, compiled by Christian Zerbos, lists more than 16,000 paintings and drawings. Picasso's output was several times more prolific than most artists of his era. But by at least one account, American artist Bob Ross is the only one to rival Picasso's volume, and Ross's artwork was designed specifically to be easily mass-produced quickly.
And unfortunately, on April 8th, 1973, Picasso unpacked his creator at age 91 in Lucans, France.
All right, and that brings us to number 5 on our list, Arthur Rubinstein.
Arthur Rubinstein, born January 28, 1887, was a Polish-American pianist. He received the praise from around the world for the playing of the music of a selection of composers, and many called him the greatest Chopin player of the century. Rubinstein was born in Lodz, Poland, to a family of Jews, and he was the youngest child of the family. His father was a rich owner of a factory. Although his given name is Artur Rubinstein, in English-speaking countries, he wanted to be known as Arthur Rubinstein. However, his United States impresario, Saul Harrach, wanted him to be still billed as Artur, and his recordings were released in the West under both names. Rubinstein learned the piano at age 2 in Warsaw before beginning study in Berlin at the age of 8. His debut in Berlin was made in 1898, followed by a debut at Carnegie Hall in the United States in 1906. Throughout his life, Rubinstein was famous as a solo pianist, a soloist in piano concertos, and even a chamber musician. He retired from the stage at age 89 and went back to art creator in Geneva, Switzerland on December 2nd, 1982 at the age of 95. And his body was cremated. On the first anniversary of his death, his ashes were buried in Jerusalem, as specified in his will, in a plot mound nicknamed Rubenstein Forest, overlooking the Jerusalem Forest.
Alright, and that brings us to number 6 on our list. Number 6 is Albert Schweitzer. Albert Schweitzer, born January 14th, 1875, was a German polymath from Alsace. He was a theologian, organist, musicologist, writer, humanitarian, philosopher, and physician. As a Lutheran minister, Schweitzer challenged both the secular view of the historical Jesus as depicted by the historical critical method, current at this time, as well as the traditional Christian view. His contributions to the interpretation of Pauline Christianity concern the role of Paul's mysticism of being in Christ as primary and the doctrine of justification by faith as secondary.
He received the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize for his philosophy of reverence for life, becoming the 8th Frenchman to be awarded that prize. His philosophy was expressed in many ways, but most famously in founding and sustaining the Hôpital Albert Schweitzer in Lambaréné, French Equatorial Africa, which is now known as Gabon. As a music scholar and organist, he studied the music of German composer Johann Sebastian Bach and influenced the organ reform movement.
When Albert Schweitzer was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952, he took the $33,000 in prize money and started the Impresarium at Lambaréné. From 1952 until his death, he worked against nuclear tests and nuclear weapons with Albert Einstein, Otto Hahn, and Bertrand Russell. In 1957-1958, he broadcast 4 speeches over Radio Oslo, which were published in Peace or Atomic War.
Weeks prior to his death, an American film crew allowed to visit Schweitzer and Drs. Muntz and Friedman, both Holocaust survivors, to record his work and daily life at the hospital. The film, The Legacy of Albert Schweitzer, narrated by Henry Fonda, was produced by Warner Brothers and aired once. It resides in the vault today and in deteriorating condition, although several attempts have been made to restore and re-air the film. All access has been denied. Unfortunately, Schweitzer went back to our creator on September 4th, 1965, at his beloved hospital in Lambaréné, now an independent Gabon. His grave on the banks of the Ogooué River is marked by a cross he made himself.
And number 7 on the list.
Pablo Casals. He's the second Pablo on our list today, and he was born Pau Casals de Filho. In English, he's known as Pablo Casals. Pablo Casals was a Catalan and Puerto Rican cellist, composer, and conductor. Born in Spain, he made many recordings throughout the career of his solo, chamber, and orchestral career, including some as conductor, but he is perhaps best remembered for the recordings he made of the cello suites by Bach. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1963 by President John F. Kennedy.
Casals was born in El Vendrell, Catalonia, Spain. His father, Carles Casals y Rabias, was a parish organist and choir master. He gave Casals instruction in piano, songwriting, violin, and organ. He was also a very strict disciplinarian. When Casals was young, his father would pull the piano from the wall and have him and his brother Artur stand behind it and name the notes and the scales that his father was playing. At the age of 4, Casals could play the violin, piano, and flute. At the age of 6, he played the violin well enough to perform a solo in public. His first encounter with the cello-like instrument was from witnessing a local traveling Catalan musician who played a cello-strung broom handle. Upon request, his father built him a crude cello using a gourd as a soundbox. When Casals was 11 years old, he first heard the real cello performed by a group of traveling musicians and decided to dedicate himself to the instrument. Casals appeared in the 1958 documentary Windjammer. In the 1960s, Casals gave many master classes throughout the world in places such as Gstaad, Zermatt, Tuscany, Berkeley, and Marlborough. Some of these master classes were televised. On November 13, 1961, he performed in the East Room at the White House by invitation of President Kennedy at a dinner given in honor of the governor of Puerto Rico, who was Luis Munoz Marin. This performance was recorded and released as an album. Casals was also a composer. Perhaps his most effective work is La Sardana, for an ensemble of cellos which he composed in 1926. His oratorio, El Pesebre, was performed for the first time in Acapulco, Mexico on December 17, 1960. He also presented it to the United Nations during their anniversary in 1963. He was initiated as an honorary member of the Epsilon Iota chapter of the Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia Music Fraternity at FSU in 1963. He was later awarded the fraternity's Charles E. Lutton Man of Music Award in 1973. One of his last compositions was the Hymn of the United Nations. He conducted its first performance as a special concert at the UN on October 24, 1971, just 2 months before his 95th birthday. On that day, the Secretary General of the United Nations, U Thant, awarded Casals the UN Peace Medal in recognition of his stance for peace, justice, and freedom. Casals accepted the medal and made his famous I Am a Catalan speech, where he stated that Catalonia had the first democratic parliament long before England did.
Sadly, Casals passed on October 22, 1973 at Auxilio Mutuo Hospital in Hato Rey, Puerto Rico at the age of 96 from complications of a heart attack he had 3 weeks earlier. He was buried at Puerto Rico Memorial Cemetery in Carolina, Puerto Rico. He didn't live to see the end of the Franco estate, which occurred 2 years later, but was posthumously honored by the Spanish government under King Juan Carlos I, which in 1976 issued a commemorative postage stamp depicting Casals in honor of the centenary of his birth. And that brings us to number 8 on our list. Number 8, Michelangelo.
Michelangelo was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, and the poet of high Renaissance. He was born in the Republic of Florence, but was mostly active in Rome from his 30s onwards. His work was inspired by models from classic antiquity and had a lasting influence on Western art. Michelangelo's creative abilities and mastery in a range of artistic arenas define him as the archetypal Renaissance man, along with his rival and elder contemporary, Leonardo da Vinci.
Given the sheer volume of surviving correspondence, sketches, and reminiscences, Michelangelo is one of the best documented artists of the 16th century and was lauded by contemporary biographers as the most accomplished artist of his era. In his older age, Michelangelo created a number of Pietà in which he apparently reflects upon mortality. They are heralded by the victory, perhaps created for the tomb of Pope Julius II, but left unfinished. In this group,
the youthful Victor overcomes an older hooded figure with the features of Michelangelo.
The Pieta of Vittoria Colonna is a chalk drawing of a type described as presentation drawings, as they might be given a gift by an artist, and were not necessarily studies towards a painted work. The last sculpture that Michelangelo worked on, just 6 days before his passing, was Rodanini Pieta, and it could never be completed, but he carved it away until there was insufficient stone. The legs and attached arm remain from a previous stage of work. As it remains, the sculpture has an abstract quality in keeping with the 20th century concepts of sculpture. Unfortunately, Michelangelo went back to be with our Creator on February 18th, 1564 in Rome, at the age of 88. His body was taken from Rome for interment at the Basilica of Santa Croce, fulfilling the Maestro's last request to be buried in his beloved Florence. His heir, Leonardo Buonarroti, commissioned Vasari to design and build the tomb of Michelangelo, a monumental project that cost 770 scudi and took over 14 years to complete. Marble for the tomb was supplied by Cosimo I de' Medici, the Duke of Tuscany, who had also organized a state funeral to honor Michelangelo in Florence.
And that brings us to number 9 on our list. Number 9, Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel, born Gabrielle Bonheur Coco Chanel, was born on August 19, 1883, and she was a French fashion designer and businesswoman. The founder and namesake of the Chanel brand, she was credited in the post-World War I era with popularizing a sporty, casual chic as the feminine standard of style. She is the only fashion designer listed on Times Magazine list of 100 most influential people of the 20th century. A prolific fashion creator, Chanel extended her influence beyond couture clothing into jewelry, handbags, and fragrance. Her signature scent, Chanel No. 5, has become an iconic product, and Chanel herself designed her famous interlocked CC monogram, which has been in use since the 1920s. Her couture house closed in 1939 with the outbreak of World War II. Chanel stayed in France during the Nazi German occupation and collaborated with the occupiers and Vichy puppet regime. Declassified documents revealed that she had collaborated directly with the Nazi intelligence service, the Sicherheitsdienst. One plan in late 1943 was for her to carry an SS peace overture to Churchill to end the war. Chanel began a liaison with a German diplomat spy she had known before the war, Baron Hans Gunther von Dinklage. After the end of the war, Chanel was interrogated about her relationship with Dinklage, but she was not charged as a collaborator due to her invention. After the end of the war, Chanel was interrogated about her relationship with Dinklage, but she was not charged as a collaborator due to the intervention by her friend, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. When the war ended, Chanel moved to Switzerland before returning to Paris in 1954 to revive her fashion house. According to Edmond Charles Roux, Chanel had become tyrannical and extremely lonely late in life. In her last years, she was sometimes accompanied by Jacques Chazot and her confidant, Lilou Marquand. A faithful friend was also the Brazilian Amy de Haran, who lived in Paris 4 months a year at the nearby Hotel Meuse. The former rivals shared happy memories of times with the Duke of Westminster. They frequently strolled together through central Paris. As 1971 began, Chanel was 87 years old, tired and ailing. She carried out her usual routine of preparing the spring catalog. She'd gone over a long drive on the afternoon of Saturday, January 9th. Soon after that, she felt ill and went to bed a little early, and she said her final words to her maid. "You see, this is how you die." She died on Sunday, January 10th, 1971, at the Hotel Ritz, where she had resided for more than 30 years. Her funeral was held at the Église de la Madeleine. Her fashion models occupied the first seats during the ceremony, and her coffin was covered with white flowers, camellias, gardenias, orchids, azaleas, and a few red roses. Salvador Dali, Marlene Dietrich, Serge Liflar, Cristobal Balenciaga, Jacques Chazot, Yves Saint Laurent, and Marie-Helene de Rothschild attended her funeral in the Church of the Magdalene. Her grave is in the Bois de Vaux Cemetery in Lausanne, Switzerland. And that brings us to number 10 on the list. Number 10 is whatever you think it should be. Go ahead and put in the comments whatever old fart that accomplished something later on in life that you could think of that I didn't mention on the list. I really hope you liked this episode. I really liked making it. Please share this video with anybody that you think would really benefit from this information. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and like the video if you can. It really helps the algorithm and helps YouTube push this video to other folks just like yourself that likes these kind of videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.